the feud was real. You know, I mean, I have said this before. I'm sure you're not going to include it as a sound, but like, people don't understand. Like, I hated those guys, but it's because they earned it. You know, they definitely earned it.
Flag is down. We have a start.
Over the years, whether you realize it or not, there have been some pretty epic races, whether you're looking back at in 1998 on the basin, Harvard beat Princeton by, I think it was 0.4 of a second after Princeton won all the other races except the 1V. Or maybe in more recent times, the 2011 race, which was on YouTube.
Now Princeton on the response.
A back and forth race all the way down.
I mean, coming into Princeton, you kind of just understand that you're stepping into something bigger than yourself. And as much as every single race matters, I think the Harvard one it has a different feel to it just because it is Harvard and it's a very similar school to ours, 5/8 right through. And the difference between Harvard and the other schools is that the alumni and the rivalry is kind of what's on your mind. And you think you're not really racing for yourself, your boat anymore. It's your whole school and the history behind it as well. The conditions were pretty bad that day, and I remember just thinking about it during the warm-up, and then so the race starts, and I think 500 meters in, we're a few seats up, and I could actually see a few Harvard guys in my peripheral, and that was just really exciting. And then the adrenaline kicks in, and it's kind of like, okay, this is really happening. And then I remember our bow man, Stefan and I in the bow at the time, we were thinking, okay, we're going to make a move at 1K. And that's when we're going to really tighten up because everyone's getting tired then. And it's just a time when you need to be on it. And he gave me a whisper at 1K. And then that's kind of when it was like, okay, now we're going to do everything we can. And that was the point in the race where I think we really stepped away.
Much still with an open water lead from Princeton. But Harvard looking over their left shoulder here in the bow as Princeton opening up some more. About a half a length with 4 seats of open water lead on the Harvard crew.
Yeah, I remember going to the last 500, and that's where the conditions really started to hit. And I just remember telling myself, just hold on, don't mess up.
Harvard crew, truly impressive work here from the Princeton 3V.
Yeah, Princeton staying very clean as they take up for the sprint here. Harvard, well rowed certainly, but
we don't yell from the launch, isn't that the rule?
You can do whatever you want.
What's Harvard out? Harvard's out half a length.
I think they're about level.
That boat had a ton of juice. And I remember, pick a starboard, being a port in the bow section of the boat, pick a starboard that you'd like to try to counter on a move and put them all in one boat. You had, Craig Perry sitting in 7, you had both the Flicks, and you had Paul sitting behind you, so when it was time to go, you had to dig in or else you're going to end up in a buoy line, And I remember that about that boat more than anything. Our moves were just, it was crazy. We could we were sitting on base speed with Harvard for probably 700 meters or so of that race. Probably moving about as fast as them. But for the 300 meters or so that we were on moves, the move before the 1,000, and the move after the 1,000, we moved at probably a seat or more every stroke. It was like a perfect race plan. Because that was Greg. Greg was still coaching the Frosh.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember specifically how our freshman year tied into that week and that race. And and they beat us by half a canvas or something like that in the 1V.
Right.
And they took a Princeton jersey and they hung it on the flagpole in front of Harvard's boathouse. And that was in the Boston Globe. That was in the sports section of the Boston Globe that we had heard about. Said it was a rebuilding year. And that was on the back, was plastered on the back of our shirt all year.
Go Harvard!
I don't think anybody expected us to be as good as we were as a team, deep in the 1 and the 2V. And that's the story of those years from those guys, though.
The biggest thing I remember before the race is obviously we were the last race of the day. And before or kind of as we were on the water, we had heard that the 4V and the 3V had won. And then I remember that when we were near the starting gates, Greg kind of gave us the thumbs up from the launch after the 2V race, saying that they had also won. And so, knowing that the 2V, 3V, and 4V had already won their races gave us a lot of confidence as we were in the gates. And we had a couple seats at the 250, and then
250 in, Tigers sitting up a deck on the Crimson.
And then I remember we had about a half a length at the 500 in, and everything just kind of went exactly as we had planned and had practiced. And I remember coming into that second 500, we had a huge burst of confidence, and we just kept pushing. And then we had a length at the 1,000, and then it was pretty much just take control from there and keep that for another 3 minutes. And
Tigers have a bit of open. Harvard has open up on MIT. 247 to the 1,000 here for the Tigers.
Yeah, I think that as a team, that was definitely one of the most focused weeks we had in our 4 years there. And we knew that, I think PK was probably just telling us all not to screw up and to the last couple 100 meters was one of the most exciting races I've had. I was super jazzed up, and I remember yelling with 250 to go. I gave out a big yeah, and then I remember as we were crossing the finish line, I was screaming a little bit more. And crossing the finish line and knowing that we'd beaten them and won the Compton Cup for the first time in 9 years was, up to that point, obviously there was more to come in the future, and we had a lot more success that next year and a half. But up to that point, that was probably the proudest that I had ever been racing as a Tiger. So, well, in 2016, the basin was the most challenging to perform on with the conditions, and just how open the course was, and what an advantage it is for Harvard, who train there every day.
It was extremely rough, especially out near the starting blocks. So it was not an ideal warm up, but it was good enough, I guess. It was really just taking it 10 strokes at a time. The points in the race that I remember are, maybe 15, 20 strokes in, looking out of the boat and maybe having, we had probably half a length, 3 seats kind of thing. So I was thinking, okay, this is really solid. We're looking good. And then
I just remember we got up and it was just a ripping tailwind. There was foot-high waves that were, kind of coming up to near the gunnel of the boat. And it was just, we had a few seats up, and that race was more, I guess the kind of the other piece of pressure was that we hadn't won the Compton Cup back-to-back since the 1950s. And I know that's something we all talked about in the week leading up to it, was that this is, last year we made history, winning it for the first time in 9 years. But, if we win it this time, it's going to be the first time in 60 years that we've done this. And that's going to be something really special. So,
was last year a fluke? Was it just because, the stars aligned and maybe Harvard had a bad day? Or is this season going to be, a successful season?
Moving now. Big rolls.
Yeah, it's going to funnel through this bridge big time.
I don't think we got more than 10 strokes in a row where the boat was set and we were running well, and, there wasn't, you know, a huge check on the boat. So
we're moving pretty well here, huh?
Yeah. Come on. There goes Harvard.
Harvard's at 40.
The next point in the race I remember was maybe, I don't know, 500 meters to go. Looking out again and maybe having, you know, 6 seats, something like that. And thinking, I hope to God that nobody catches a crab in this last 500 meters, because that's kind of where that race was going. It was so rough and like so windy, and it really picked up in the back half that we were very focused on how, we were always very focused on how the other boats had done. I think that 2016, we set it up as a team focus, and, you know, we saw at the IRAs in June or May that we had, you know, such a solid team showing that the theme for the year, I think, would be, you know, making sure that the 4V, the 5V, the 3V, and the 2V are doing well.
Yeah, I love racing in Boston in the basin because, I mean, that's rowing. Greg loves when it's like that, and he doesn't think of rowing as the sport of it. He thinks of rowing as the grit part. And I think when you're racing in the basin, you're bound to have a good day of rowing. It's going to be tough, and you're going to learn something at the other end of it. And I think it was kind of just like that. And by the end, I think it was actually a 9-second margin, if I remember. The freshmen really earned their stripes in that race. Just that we didn't stop trying, we didn't slow down, we didn't kind of get comfortable, and we just kept pushing on. And it was a testament to their own commitment to it.
You know, so I think that was like the cool thing about it. A lot of times you don't realize shit is good until you don't have it anymore.
Sweet.
So it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing you guys are putting together, man.